Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Crash Cinnamon. It's your host McKenna. So today we're continuing with demystifying or not breaking down some of the popular things we hear. We talked about, you do you in another previous episode. So today I was looking at this phrase we always say, oh, you're not acting civilized. He was acting in a very uncivilized manner, or she was acting in a very uncivilized manner, or that country was very uncivilized, especially when you read in history books. And that got me very curious in the last few weeks, and I was wondering to myself, how do human beings, or rather what is the sign of civilization, so that another human being can class this human A that they're not civilized? And is civilization important? And does that make you cool? Or it got me thinking, and it got me into a study, and I looked into civilizations, the first civilizations that were recorded, like in Mesopotamia, in China, the Egyptian one, all of them, the first ancient ones. And it looks at different things. And actually, civilization is the presence of human beings living in complex structures, organizations, more like, actually, where you find there is division of labor, there is ways of communication, like beyond the common language. There is forms of technology, there is surplus of food. And if you think about it, food is a very important thing now, especially when you talk about food insecurity. But even then, when our country had food, it was considered civilized. Religious entities, and also a form of administrative structure, could be political or otherwise, but some type of governance. And I pondered about this, and I was reading about different kind of civilizations and all that. And especially I was reading about the idea of, when you break down the different components of what you will find in a civilized society. And one of it was very interesting. I was looking about the Great Zimbabwe, and funny enough, I knew about it when I was in school, but I never really thought about it, because it became such a huge thing. It was with, I think, 1100 BC or something like that. And this kingdom was vast. It stretched all the way from Maghreb, then the East African coast, and all the way down. And it was so amazing, because they even created soapstone images. One of the very notable ones are the birds. I can't remember what the full names are, but they're actually even in their coat of arms and in their flag. And even former President Mugabe, who passed away, he ruled and very much attached himself to that kind of symbol. He really wanted to identify with the previous, what was classed as civilization in the Great Zimbabwe Kingdom. And it's amazing, because those who, I don't know if you've not heard of President Mugabe, I don't know where you've been, but you can see some of the things he tried to implement was influenced by that. And I found that very interesting. And one of the things in East Africa, I remember, language was developed, like Swahili was developed because of trading with the Arab countries, and that those little communities created their own kind of structure of how to talk to each other, ways of trading, money systems. That's another thing of civilization, and all kind of things. And it gave rise to the Swahili people and this beautiful language now that is spoken in more than 6 African nations. And when you think about Mesopotamia, was greatly known for agriculture, and I remember especially in school learning about irrigation and the irrigation schemes that actually were in Mesopotamia, which is now modern day Iraq. And there are other civilizations like the Inca who didn't have like a written language, but they had a way of it was a system that was even used for census. It was just very genius in how they created things. If you go down to the Romans, they now brought different structures. They're the ones who started creating roads, thought about sanitization, hygiene, and now we think about Western culture, Eastern culture, African culture. It's or Western civilization, as it's called. And if we look about the technology advancements in different parts of the world, it's amazing. And it's interesting that as human beings we collectively think the same way. Doesn't matter where we are, distance is nothing, because in all this civilization they had common components. And I found it very, very interesting actually. And one of the things I looked at was one of the cultural philosophers or anthropologists. She was called Margaret Mead, and she said, she was asked once what would be the first signs of civilizations, or how would she know a particular group of people was civilization. And she said to her, actually, for her, if she noticed a femur, the femur bone that is broken and has healed, then she knew that there was civilization in that place. And I found that very interesting, because according to her, she said, a broken femur, which is the thigh bone, it means somebody stayed with that other person who had a broken bone and helped them heal. Because according to her, and we know this, and I actually had never thought about it, in the animal kingdom, animals do not survive for long if they have a broken bone, because they can't run, they can't hunt, and obviously that's, your survival is pegged on you being able to hunt, being able to run away from the predator, So I found that very, very interesting, that according to her, a civilization means helping each other. So if a particular group of people were able to help each other, come together and help somebody who was down, that is the first sign of civilization. And when you think about it now in 2022, and we throw things about like, when somebody's eating food with their hands, they're uncivilized. Like, really? In fact, nobody comes with civilization inbuilt. In fact, we have what we human beings have is capacity built in us, capacity to be able to think about how to come up with ideas, invent, be able to run. All these other things are in us. There's no gene for that, and actually Mead talks about it in her her various papers, and I found that very interesting, that we will put each other down in 2022 throwing words about, and we don't really understand the structure, the complex structure of civilization, and actually helping somebody in their worst position and taking care of them until they heal. And that could be, if they're sick, depressed, going through a financial crisis, all this kind of thing. So it was very, very interesting to think that actually when we're not helping each other, I'm not saying that is the the what is it, helping somebody is actually the essence of civilization. But I actually agree with her, because in order for things to move in a society, you have to come together, have a common goal, have to agree, so that things can move. Without that, if farmers are not going to plant, then there's no food in the country, there's hunger. I mean, remember what happened in Ireland a few years ago when there was the potato famine, and it caused mass immigration and all kind of things. It's very interesting, so I want to put it to you today. When you hear famous things or hear words like, oh, he's not civilized, she's not civilized, because she or he is acting in a way, especially in this cancel culture, and I'll talk about that in a different episode. Please do not insult the people, your ancestors, back in the day, who actually toiled, put up structures, cut, roads, came up with systems, were in organized groups to create civilization. Okay, so it challenged me a lot, and it made me think, actually, when you're a healing nation, when a society is focused on ensuring the weak, the vulnerable, our care are safe, then that nation or society is way much stronger, because they will surround each other. You've seen like how mother hen, as they call it, is surrounding her chicks when there's actually danger. That's how society should be right now. We should be covering those who are vulnerable, those who are homeless, those who don't have anything, especially with the financial crisis happening now after COVID. That is what civilization is all about. Not if you have Bentleys or the next, Gucci edition or that, or it's the simple things in life. And I was really, it's a simple truth, which I know of, but when you look at it in the bigger aspect or wider aspect of life, you see, when we help each other, we go further. Even there's a saying in English that say two heads are better than one. It's true. So I want to challenge you to be that person who helps others through the thickest. And I know it's not easy, especially if you've helped somebody several times and they go back to the same mistake, the same vomit, all these kind of things, and it can be very exasperating. I know this. But however, if you've never tried to reach out to somebody, please be that person, because in order for us to move as a race, and here I mean human race, that's another episode for another time. The challenges that are coming, if you're not awake, you've not been awake in 2022, if you see that kind of crisis coming up right now, we need all of us to be together. And that means ensuring those who are weak, vulnerable, sick, at their lowest, are also strong, because we are only as strong as our opponent. And these crazy things happening. So yeah, I just want to talk to you about that, and put a seed in your thoughts, in your mind rather, to think about how civilization has changed and grown because of the unity of people. And she also says you never underestimate the strength of a few people, because they're the ones who change the world when they are committed and they have the same shared goal and purpose. Okay, so yeah, thank you for listening to this episode of Crash Cinnamon, and I see you on the next one.